In this tutorial, we'll talk about experimental probability versus theoretical probability and how to determine experimental probability from a list of results. Our first problem reads, a bag contains red, green, and blue marbles. A marble is drawn randomly from the bag. Its color is recorded and then it is put back in the bag. This is repeated a total of 30 times. The results are shown in the table. Question is, what is the experimental probability of drawing a red marble? Now, there is a difference between experimental and theoretical probability. The theoretical probability is the mathematically expected result, whereas the experimental probability is what actually happens when we perform an experiment. And believe it or not, those numbers are not always the same. Now, the more experiments you do, the closer you get to the theoretical probability. If you do an experiment 1,000 times or 2,000 times, you're probably going to get something really close to the theoretical probability. But if you do it maybe once or twice or 3 or 4 times, you might not get anything near what's expected. Here's an example of theoretical probability using this particular problem. Let's say we had 2 marbles in a bag full of 10, right? We got 10 marbles here and 2 of them are red. Theoretically, the probability of reaching into that bag and pulling out a red marble is 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 5. That is your probability of drawing a red marble out of the bag. But the experimental probability, in this case, assuming that we did have 10 marbles in the bag and there were 2 of them that were red, turns out to be 3 out of 30, which isn't exactly the same. But we are concerned here with the experimental probability, so we'll go ahead and focus on that. What is the experimental probability of drawing a red marble? Well, we know, actually it's been given to us, that the experimental probability of drawing a red marble is 3 out of the total of 30. So we know that the experiment was repeated 30 times. Out of the 30 times, we got it 3 times. And that can be simplified, of course, because you notice that 3/30 isn't down here. That can be simplified to 1/10. So the experimental probability of drawing a red marble is 1/10, or letter A. Let's move on to the second problem. A solid with sides numbered 1 to 5 was rolled 150 times. The results are shown in the table. What is the experimental probability that the next roll is an even number? Well, we know that it's going to be out of a total of 150 times. That's how many times we performed the experiment. And we know that we had 5 choices here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What's the experimental probability that the next roll is an even number? Well, how many ways can we get an even number? Well, we could get a 2, or we could get a 4. Now, out of the 150 times that we rolled that 5-sided solid, we actually got 2 30 times, and we got 4 24 times, for a total of 54 out of 150. And that can be simplified. If we divide by 6 on the top and the bottom, that can be simplified to 9/25. And we want that as a percent, so we'll put that over 100. We'll create a proportion. We know that we got 9 out of 25. What would that be out of 100? And we can multiply that. That's going to give us 900. We multiply these two, and then we have to divide by the 25. And 900 divided by 25 is 36. So the answer is C, 36%, or 36 out of 100.